Call to order, start with pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask council members to make sure their microphones are on.
Is there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor, there is not.
Motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. We have one presentation.
Tonight we have Andy Rice from KDV Bergen, the city's auditor, giving a presentation on the audit for financial year ended December 31st, 2024, and that item is on the consent agenda for council action later on the agenda. Give me 1 second, Andy. There we go.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council for having me here tonight. As Tom mentioned, presenting the audit results for the year ended December 31st, 2024. The next slide highlights one element of our reporting this year. One more, there we go. And that's our independent auditor's report that's included in the city's financial statements. That report highlights what the city's responsibility is relating to that financial reporting process, and that's to annually prepare those financial statements. And it's our job as your auditor to provide an opinion as to whether those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. And happy to report that we are giving a clean or an unmodified opinion, which is the best that we can give as your auditor. The next slide highlights a couple other pieces of our reporting, one being our report in accordance with government auditing standards. That report talks about how we consider internal control over financial reporting when planning our audit, but we're also required to report any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that come to our attention as part of that process, and we did have 2 findings to report for this year, one being a lack of segregation of accounting duties. That finding has been present in the past, and just a reminder of what that is. Proper segregation of accounting duties is kind of a bar or a measurement that we use from a financial reporting perspective as to whether there's enough individuals involved in a process, to ensure there's checks and balances there to ensure it's properly reported. In a perfect environment, you would expect there that you'd have one individual that would be responsible for initiating and authorizing an activity, another individual that records and processes that information, another individual that has custody of the related assets, and then lastly, you'd have another individual responsible for the reconciliation and reporting of that information. And it's not a common thing to have that perfect segregation of accounting duties for local governments, just based on the sizes of finance teams. So again, it's not uncommon to see that for a city of this size, but something that City Council is continually needs to be aware of, as processes, people change, that condition is present. And then other finding that we have to report is material audit adjustments. Again, as part of that audit process, we're taking a look at to whether those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects, and we did note some adjustments that were required to get to that point, so did have that finding here for 2024. The last reporting that we have is our report on Minnesota legal compliance. This talks about the Office of the State Auditor's legal compliance guides, and we're required to report if we find any instances of non-compliance with the statutes included in those guides, and we had no findings to report for this year. The last piece of reporting that we have is our communications letter. That includes all other required communication, but also highlights some charts and graphs. Just a reminder, when we take a look at the general fund, that's on a modified accrual basis of accounting, so it does focus on current assets and current liabilities, and the items that affect kind of near-term liquidity. And the exception to that would be, inter-fund balances or inter-fund borrowing, and that's something you would see in the fire department fund. Actually does have a negative fund balance at the end of the year. year because the exception there is that you still would acknowledge and record any interfund borrowings, and there are some significant borrowings out of that fund that will ultimately get resolved in future years. But tonight, just focusing on the general fund as well as the enterprise funds. To start, wanted to highlight the makeup of general fund revenues and how those compare between 2024 and 2023. The majority of general fund revenues continued to come from property taxes. There was a shift in that percentage comparing 24 to 23, went from 77% down to 70%, and that was mainly driven by an increase in development and permits issued. So you do see that offsetting in that category, which increased from 8% to 15%. Other categories were fairly consistent between the 2 years. The next chart, I wanted to highlight the budget to actual results. The budget called for a revenue budget of about $3.2 million. That came in about 15% better than anticipated, or about $488,000 more than anticipated. And the most significant variance there was in licenses and permits. That was ultimately about $409,000 better than anticipated. And historically, it's just budgeted conservatively because that can vary from year to year. Another area is miscellaneous revenues. Also an area that's typically budgeted conservatively because that's where investment earnings are included. And so those can, again, vary from year to year. And with better interest rates this year, that ended up coming in better than anticipated by about $35,000. The next slide highlights the general fund expenditures and how those were made up between the 2 years. And again, fairly consistent between 23 and 24. The one area that you do see a shift is in public safety. That went from 39% up to 45%, and that's directly related to the development and the related building inspection fees and the related contract for services for that for that need there. So that was the main shift that you saw there for 2024. When looking at budget to actual results, expenditures did come in more than anticipated by about 7%, or $231,000, and the majority of that was in public safety. About $180,000 was in that category, and that again relates to the additional building inspection fees with the increased permits issued in development. The last chart related to the general fund is just highlighting general fund balance over the last 5 years, and this is the equity position in that fund. That did increase with the current year surplus from about $1.2 million to $1.5 million. The city does have a fund balance policy in place to maintain minimum fund balance levels, and that's presented as a percentage of expenditures. And at the end of the year, fund balance is about 46% of 2024 actual expenditures, and that is in compliance with the city's policy. Next, we do have the enterprise funds to take a look at. And again, these have a bit different terminology because these are on a full accrual basis. So it includes things like depreciation expense, some non-cash related expenses there. And with the increased development here in 2024, there was an increase in hookup fees. So we did see an increase in operating revenues. And as a result, there was a significant increase in the operating surplus, which increased from about $100,000 to $640,000 for 2024. The next chart highlights the sewer fund operations. Similar story there with an increase in hookups, saw an increase in operating revenue. However, there is some required fees associated with the collection of those SAC fees. So did see an operating expenses as a result of that, and did see a surplus this year of about $54,000. And then lastly, did have the storm sewer fund, did also had an increase in operating revenue and ultimately generated a surplus of about $36,000 for the year. That's a highlight of our audit report, as well as some key elements there of the financial statements. And next, I'd just like to open it up for any questions. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Public comment. Anybody have any public comment on anything that is not on the agenda? No? All right. Move to consent agenda. Anything there that we need to talk about? If not,
Motion to approve consent. I will second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearings, we have none. General business.
Mr. Mayor, we have multiple action items associated with the proposed Highlands Eagleview development. Those include approving a wetland replacement plan and 2 land use applications, which would be approving a planned unit development and approving preliminary plat, and then lastly, a grading authorization permit based on the preliminary plat. If approved, Renee Christensen will be giving the staff report.
Thank you. I plan to go through kind of an overview of the whole development like we did during the concept plan review, as to review each item again. Again, the development name is Highlands at Eagleview. This is a residential development now containing 150 lots and 6 outlots on 52.74 gross acres. The plat would create 148 new lots and reconfiguration of the lot lines around the 2 existing home sites. Property owners of the overall property that would be preliminary platted is Victory Fields LLC, On-Site Marketing Company, and Scott and Lynette Henry. The applicant is Tamarack Land Development, and the requested actions are to approve the wetland replacement plan, approve the request for PUD zoning, approve the preliminary plat, and approve the grading authorization. The property is currently zoned PUD, which is a special zoning district that approved development back in 2005, Eagleview Estates. There was a new concept plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission and City Council in 2024 and early 2025. There was a neighborhood meeting held at the library by the developer hosted the meeting. There were a couple of staff members present at that meeting. Concerns observed by staff or identified by staff at that neighborhood meeting related to questions about drainage, concern about the ghost plat that was shown on the properties to the north, screening, traffic, roadway connections to adjacent properties. And then the city did receive the formal application for zoning and plat approval, and a public hearing was required under state law, and that was held before the Planning Commission on May 27th. There were concerns during the public hearing expressed about headlights, drainage, questions about drainage to the west, questions about, again, the ghost plat shown to the north, concerns about maintaining drainage from the north through the property, and questions about traffic counts. This map just depicts the location of the property in the far northwestern portion of the city and city's growth area. This is a graphic depiction of the plat. Reviewing the neighborhood conditions, as you can see a little aerial photograph with the subject properties highlighted in red. To the south of the proposed development is the Eagleview Elementary School and agricultural land. To the east is agricultural land. To the north is approximately 40-acre piece of ag land and rural residential properties that vary from about 5 to 10 acres in size. And to the west, there is a farmstead and agricultural land and a rural residential home. The property is guided by the city's comprehensive plan to low-density residential. We have an obligation to development in that area. It must meet 2.5 to 5 units per net acre under our approved comprehensive plan. The development as proposed is 3.31 units per net acre, and all of the lots are proposed as single-family detached and meet the currently guided land use for the property. Again, the current zoning of the property is a PUD zoning, which reflects a historic plat that was never constructed, that's shown on the top drawing, and it is proposed now to be rezoned to a new PUD zoning, which reflects a new plat, and that is shown on the bottom. So they're somewhat similar, and similar number of lots as well. So PUD zoning is kind of a special zoning district. It's used in appropriate settings and situations to, that create or maintain development patterns that are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. They sometimes allow for the mixing of land uses. In this case, the PUD is used to provide variations to the strict applications of the land use regulations in the city's code to improve site design and operation, while at the same time incorporating design elements that exceed city standards, and to create a more efficient approach to land use. This particular slide and table outlines the slight reduction in the lot widths and setbacks that will be, that are being proposed within this development that have received positive feedback from the council and planning commission previously. The minimum lot width in this R2 zoning district is 70 feet, and the applicant has requested a minimum lot width of 65 feet for this development. So that's one of the primary reasons for this, that is being zoned PUD. In addition, there's a 25-foot front setback versus a typical 30-foot front setback. In this development, they're actually increasing the side setback from 7 to 7.5 feet. And then there are 2 lots adjacent to a stormwater pond where they are seeking a reduced setback from the ordinary high water mark of the stormwater pond, and that is a infiltration basin. Also, along County Road 27, they've requested flexibility for the screening requirement along the county road to either allow fencing or landscaping. So that is written into the current approvals. Over and above, the developer will construct trails through Outlet C, which is where the proposed, or the park will be located. And the developer will provide a variation in housing styles as outlined in the narrative provided by the developer and included in the application. In addition to reviewing those requirements for PUDs, all zonings in the city, there are requirements that the city must consider when considering a rezoning of a property. And that is number 1, it has to be consistent with the city's comp plan. Number 2, it has to be compatible, the proposed use has to be compatible with adjacent and future land uses. Number 3, the use conforms with all standards in the city's zoning ordinance except as allowed by PUD deviations. Number 4, the proposed use can be accommodated by this existing public services and will not overburden the city's service capacity. And number 5, traffic generation by the proposed use is compatible or is within the capabilities of the street serving the property. And staff does believe that the request to rezone the property meets these stated criteria. The city has tree preservation requirements. This is largely a farm field. A tree inventory has been completed, and there were only 6 significant trees identified on the property, which are all proposed to be saved. This is a landscaping plan that is included in the development plan. We have landscaping requirements for the developer where there's double frontage lots, where the backyard also backs up to a street and backs up to a collector or arterial road. So the developer screening obligations would apply along Texas Avenue, along 255th Street, and along the east along Nevada, even though Nevada is non-existent today. So as mentioned earlier, the applicant has requested some flexibility to be able to install either a continuous 6-foot-high maintenance-free fence or trees along Texas Avenue. Earlier during, as a result of feedback received from property owners to the north, there was a suggestion or offer to place a 6-foot-high fence at the north side of, this is referred to as Street E within the plat. to shield any potential headlights that would be coming into the development for these rural properties to the north. So that is a requirement that is written into the preliminary plat approval. In addition to the developer obligations for planting trees in the development, the builder will also have obligation to plant 2 trees on each lot. So the developer is proposing 85 deciduous trees, 73 coniferous trees, and then builders will plant an additional 296 trees. Easements are always required during the platting process around the perimeter of the lots. Easements have been depicted as required except on one lot, which is, we've noted on the plan. There's one small correction that needs to be made. Sewer service is available to the property at the southeast corner along the Nevada Avenue, near the Nevada Avenue 255th Street intersection via 6-inch PVC sewer force main. A lift station will be needed to serve this development, which was proposed on Outlot A. It's on the very northeast corner of the development. And then a force main will be constructed from that new lift station to the existing force main. Preliminary utility plans have been submitted and reviewed by the city engineer. The city engineer's office is in the process of designing the lift station, which would be constructed by the developer. Water service is also available in the same location via 12-inch ductile iron pipe. The city's comprehensive water plan requires that 12-inch water main or equivalent be extended through the development, and that is shown on their current plans. Stormwater, the entirety of the property lies within the Scott WMO, Watershed Management Organization. A portion of the property currently surface drains to the west. Under Texas Avenue, there are some existing culverts that drain the Texas Avenue ditch. And then there's a portion of the property that, that drains to the south and then east and then back north, so generally northeast. And that portion is shown in the black hatch here within the green box. And that portion of the property has more stringent discharge rates than the existing runoff rates allowed in other areas of the city. And these extra restrictions were a commitment by the city to the township as part of the school development. And they're meant to reduce or protect downstream properties from erosion and flooding. There's a pipe that discharges to the surface about a quarter mile north of this development. The city is aware that there's an extensive drain tile system in this property that was used for agricultural purposes. The existing drainage patterns must be perpetuated during and after the development. The storm sewer plan for the property depicts 5 basins that will serve the property after development. There's an existing, as I mentioned, there's an existing storm sewer line in the Nevada Avenue right-of-way that, again, goes north about another quarter mile into the township and discharges near a creek, near 250th Street. And then on the west side, there are 2 existing culverts that drain the west side of the property. So these series of the lots will drain into the ponds, and then the ponds will discharge to the east and to the west. And this is kind of a drainage map that was taken out of the stormwater management plan. Kind of the yellow highlighted line shows the area that will drain, again, ultimately east and west. Oops. This is a fairly recent addition to the city's report. Fairly recently, our city staff was contacted by the Scott WMO administrator, noting that she had been contacted by some property owners located on the west side of Texas Avenue, concerned about how this development might affect drainage into their properties. We had a couple of chats, and she ultimately, on Monday, submitted this letter, and I did lay this also on your table tonight. The letter had some suggestions. There were 3 comments in the letter that were submitted for staff consideration. And then, in addition, last night, staff received an email from the same property owners, which we believe contacted the WMO, stating their request for for the city to add a condition requiring an assessment, a downstream assessment of stormwater impacts. I think when we get maybe through my presentation, if the city engineer's office would like to add any additional regarding this particular item, since it is come up in fairly recently, I will turn it over to, I think Rich is online and Luke is here as well. Moving on, also tonight included in the request is a request to approve a wetland replacement plan. A wetland delineation was completed for this property, and a 2.49 acre type 1 wetland was identified on the site, which is protected under the Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act. The wetland is proposed to be replaced on a 2-to-1 ratio by purchasing credits from a wetland bank. The Technical Evaluation Panel, commonly referred to as the TEP, has reviewed this application and provided a recommendation of approval of the replacement plan to the city. In Elko New Market, we have all the replacement plan applications approved by the city council. Sometime in some cities, they are done at a staff level. There are no FEMA floodplains or DNR protected waters on the property. The development borders on 3 streets: Texas on the west, 255th on the south, and Nevada Avenue on the east. Although the majority of Nevada Avenue in this location is non-existent, the city's transportation plan identifies Nevada and 255th as major collector streets, and Texas as a minor arterial. Again, that Nevada Avenue, there is a partial right-of-way that's platted along the entire east side. That's where the existing storm sewer line lies within that existing platted right-of-way. The developer will dedicate an additional 15 feet of right-of-way on their side of the plat. This road, back when it was constructed, was planned to go on the property, centered on the property line between this property and the property to the east. City code would normally require that Nevada Avenue would be constructed to the northerly property line of the plat. However, the street lacks the full right-of-way needed to construct the full street at this time. So when the property to the east develops in the future, we will obtain an additional 50 feet of right-of-way on that side, which would allow future construction of that street. 255th Street, there is an existing, this street exists the full length of the property. There is an existing trail on the side, on one side, only a portion of the street. So the trail will need to be extended along a portion of that north side. And a future sidewalk can be incorporated on the south side of 255th when the property on the south develops at some point in the future. Texas Avenue is under the jurisdiction of Scott County. It is a minor arterial roadway in the city's transportation plan. Scott County seeks 150 feet of right-of-way from the center line, 75 feet from each center line for their minor arterial roadways. They have all the right-of-way they need here. No additional right-of-way is being requested by Scott County during this plating process. There are no street connections that will be proposed to Texas from this development, nor would they be allowed. Scott County has requested that a trail bench be graded for a future trail along Texas Avenue. And just the way the grades worked out in that area, it will be partially within the county road right-of-way and partially within a city outlot that leads to that southwesterly stormwater pond. There are a number of local streets proposed within the development. Local street standards are 28 feet in width, face-to-face, with high-back curb. In instances where a street is terminated pending future extension into another property, a temporary cul-de-sac must be provided if that street is more than 150 feet in length. So we do have 2 street stubs to the north that do not exceed 150 feet in length, so they will not have temporary cul-de-sacs. But there is one street here on the western portion of the subdivision that will require a temporary cul-de-sac. We always require future road extension signs placed at the ends of streets that will be extended in the future. Concrete driveways, aprons will be required from the curb to the property line. Direct access is to major collectors or arterial streets is prohibited, so all access must come off of the local streets. Reviewing traffic, ingress and egress from the development will be from 2 access points on 255th, which are circled in the red circles. Traffic will then be distributed either east or west. West would be towards County Road 27, and if to route to the east, you would eventually probably end up at County Road 2 near Dakota or Todd. The 2024 traffic volumes on County Road 27 are 1,905 vehicles a day, and on 255th Street, the city had traffic counts there as well from 2024, show 443 vehicles a day. The city asked Bolton and Meg to assist us in doing traffic modeling and projections based on some of the feedback that we heard at the neighborhood meeting, and the engineering ITE trip generation manual was used to determine how many trips the proposed development would add to the roadway network during peak hours, as well as the total daily trips. And the 148 lot subdivision would be anticipated to generate approximately 1,447 daily trips total, with 106 a.m. peak hour trips and 144 p.m. peak hour trips. We do not have any knowledge, after consulting with Scott County and the City of Elko New Market Police Chief, we don't have knowledge of any major operational issues at the existing County Road 27 or County Road 2 intersections. At the County Road 27 and 255th Street intersection, there are turn and bypass lanes in place, and the Scott County Highway Department has reviewed the plat and did not comment on any traffic impacts to their roadway system. Again, staff, during our consultation with our traffic engineer, we wanted to understand a little more about those impacts, and with the existing traffic volumes and the anticipated traffic volumes to be added to the intersection, the traffic engineer states, "I do not see a concern regarding capacity of County Road 27 or the intersection." And also stated acceptable intersection levels of service are anticipated during peak hours. The modeling assumed all traffic from the development would go west towards the 255th Street, County Road 27 intersection. And Scott County's comprehensive plan shows, Scott County's transportation plan shows their capacity for a 2-lane highway is well above what this development would add to County Road 27, which aligns with why Scott County may not have commented. Um, 5-foot sidewalks are required adjacent to all local streets, and the developer will complete a 10-foot trail on the north side of 255th and construct the trail bench along the east side of Texas. The city's subdivision ordinance requires 8% of land within a development be dedicated for parks, playground, public open space, or trails, or the developer shall make a cash contribution to the city's park and trail fund, roughly related to the anticipated effect of the plat on the park and trail system. If no land dedication is required, a park fee has been established by the city at 8% of the fair market land value. The total land dedication requirement would be 4.07 acres. The city council had previously recommended a combination of land and cash for this development. 1.2 acres within Outlot C will be applied towards the park dedication requirements. And the direction from the city council at that time was to provide enough space for a playground area, a sport court, and a picnic shelter. And then there's also some trails that have been incorporated. So for the remaining 2.87 acres, the city will require a cash contribution based on the fair market value of the land. During the review, staff sought comments from the city engineer, public works director, city attorney, police chief, fire department, building official, school district, Newmarket Township, and Scott County Transportation Services. The city council is being asked, not being asked to hold a public hearing, that is a typo. They're being asked to provide a decision or take action on the following items. Adopt Resolution 25-44 approving notice of decision on the wetland replacement plan. Adopt.
Sorry.
That's okay. Gotcha. Adopt ordinance. (332) rezoning the property to PUD in conjunction with the Highlands at Eagleview, and adopt Resolution 2545 granting approval of the preliminary plat consisting of 150 lots on 52.74 acres, and approve a grading authorization agreement. The city code allows grading after preliminary plat approval with approval by the city council and the city engineer. And that concludes my presentation. I do know there are people here tonight related to this item.
Do we want Rich to
Yeah.
speak to it?
Luke or Rich, I know Rich.
Or
It's really unmo-
So Luke is perfectly capable of addressing this. However, I did the review, and so I thought I would give you an explanation to the extent you want to hear it about primarily the issue of the downstream assessment. It's a complicated issue. I can try and keep it simple and as brief as possible, but there are several points to consider. So if that's all right, I'll just go ahead. So the first point to keep in mind is that the city, not the watershed, is the LGU for stormwater management decisions. You guys are the deciders. Every development in Elko New Market has to meet two sets of rules. The cities and the state MPCA has a general permit, which is largely consistent with our rules. There's some variations here and there, but the developments have to meet both sets. This one does. Our rules and the state's rules are basically intended to require developers to mimic existing conditions for three major factors. One is the rate of runoff, the second is the volume of runoff, and the third is the quality of the runoff. So rate and volume can be a little confusing. If you imagine capturing all the water from a site in a bucket, and you're going to empty that bucket, the volume is how much water is in the bucket. The rate is how fast you're dumping it out of the bucket. And then, of course, the quality is what's in the water, sediment, nutrients, that type of thing. So the rules are basically set up to limit developers to not exceeding existing conditions for all three of those. So they have to attenuate the rate. Everybody is pretty familiar by now when you have hard surfaces like rooftops and pavements and pipes, water will flow off the ground faster than it did before the development. So they use ponds to capture that runoff, hold it, and release it slowly to try and mimic what happened prior to the addition of the hard surfaces. Volume, you try and keep water on site to the extent you can. In Elko New Market, we generally have pretty tight soils, so you already have high runoff volumes. Most of the water leaves the site. Some will sit in the topsoil. A farm like this one, well tiled, does slowly drain that water off the site as well. And then, of course, quality, we want to remove sediments for a couple reasons. One, they can clog up waterways and cause problems downstream. Number two, nutrients like to attach to sediments. So if we use those ponds to slow down the water so that those sediments can settle out and be captured on the site rather than discharged from the site, that's a plus. We consider the downstream assessment technique that's mentioned in our code as the city sees necessary as the review method of last resort. We would use that only when a development can't do something on site with ponding. There could be reasons like contaminated soils, or maybe it's near an airport where you don't want to attract nesting waterfowl. I would envision going forward, and in the past, we've never used that method here because we haven't needed to. Developers have always met the requirements for the big three: rate, volume, and quality. So I'm just going to give you a quick description of what a downstream assessment is. If we imagine that a site can't do any ponding or anything like that to slow that water down, hold it on site, and treat it for quality, it's just going to run off. Then what you would do is say, okay, I've got this, and I'm just going to make some numbers up here. I've got this 30-acre drainage area that drains to a culvert. So when I say drainage area, that means it's a boundary that every drop of water that falls within that boundary ends up in that culvert. That's the drainage area. So if you got a 30-acre drainage area and you have to do a downstream assessment because you can't do other techniques to hold that water on the site, then you have to look at an area where the drainage area is 300 acres. So you trace where that culvert, where the water through that culvert goes downstream to a point where the total drainage area to that downstream point is 300 acres. It's got to be 10 times. And you have to model that entire 300 acres for the terrain, where are the low spots, where are the drainage ways, what do the channels look like, how big are the pipes, what's the land cover. You put that all on a computer model, and what you're looking for is when you include your new area for the same rainstorm before the development and after, you're looking for, okay, in the after condition, does the water by this barn downstream rise to the point where it's a nuisance or not? That's the type of thing you're looking for in a downstream assessment. We already know that this site will not be increasing the runoff rate, volume, or decreasing the quality. So automatically, a downstream assessment would show no change or no harm. So to go through the time and expense to do all that modeling to find what we already know, in my view, it just makes no sense because they can fit the required facilities on their site and their calculations show that they're meeting the state and the city's requirements. I know that was quick and oversimplified. And again, I don't see many instances where we would have to do a downstream assessment in Elko New Market because we have generally the space and we don't have the conditions that would impede a developer from providing his own on-site systems. So I guess with that, if the council has any questions about that, I'd be happy to try and address them. I know that was speedy and a big topic in a short time.
I do not, do you? Doesn't look like it.
Does that address all 3 comments on this letter? Or just that second one with the downstream?
Rich's explanation addresses the second comment, and the reason is because the email that staff received from the adjacent property owners only addressed that particular comment and wanted that added as a condition to the preliminary plat approval.
And is this
Matt,
something?
we did consider the other ones and I found really none of them relevant to this particular development. Reuse, for example, it's just not practical unless you have an HOA to put in some sort of an irrigation system that would be served by a pond to serve multiple homes. However, individuals could put a sump pump in the pond to water their that's something staff can talk about. We don't have that in our regulations right now. We can't require that. It's certainly something worth talking about, but at this time, it's not in our rules, nothing we can compel. And I don't think it would be practical for a single family residential development that's not in an HOA especially. I don't remember what the first one was, Renee.
The first comment, simply modeling the pre-existing condition for the west portion draining should be agricultural only.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a suggestion to verify the modeling and adjust if needed.
Not sure why these comments are coming because the city is the LGU and the city's rules require you to model to existing conditions, not to go back 150 years before anything was ever settled and model that condition as existing. That may change going forward. I don't know, but at this time it's existing conditions. So we just found that comment to be irrelevant.
I was just going to ask if we've worked with the Scott Watershed Management Organization on other property developments before, and if this was like a comment that's come up before, or if other cities have seen it.
They prefaced very much during the introduction, many times throughout my meeting with them, is that the Scott WMO does not typically get involved in reviewing city developments, nor do they want to. It's not the role that they play or want to play. The only reason they did here was because they got a inquiry from a property owner. And yeah, we have little communication with them. I sit on some technical committees with Vanessa, so we know each other, and she felt comfortable reaching out. And
we have followed the city's and state rules for every development that's been before the council in the last 15, 20 years without an issue from Scott County.
By show of hands, how many are here to speak to this? 2?
3.
Are you here to speak about anything that hasn't been spoken about at the meeting, with the developer, through email? Or anything new you want to bring?
We would like to speak about this particular issue, this memo.
What about that? Is it already been brought forward?
No, because this memo was just published on Monday.
Okay, do we want,
It's the council's prerogative. It's not a hearing, but the council can certainly take comment from individuals if they so choose. The council historically has taken comment on developments at the meeting, although it's not a hearing, and it's, we usually has the ability that if the comment becomes repetitive or et cetera, to limit it, so.
we'll allow, 2 minutes per, if somebody wants to speak to it? Is that reasonable?
I want to ask a question before,
Sure.
which I feel like I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So it has to, let's say the development is done and then there are drainage issues. Whose responsibility is it to correct those drainage issues?
Well, it would certainly be the city's responsibility to investigate what's going on, whether it's a failure or a deficiency in the developer's improvements, or there's some new element that we have nothing to do with. There's no way to know who'd be responsible until you actually go through, and we'd certainly take the lead and working with the watershed to figure out what happened, what's going on. We haven't had that happen in the past, but yeah, things are possible.
Okay.
These will be city ponds, so.
All right, if anybody want to come up, you have 2 minutes to,
If you could please just state your name and address for the record and for the minutes, that would be greatly appreciated.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Jody Wagner. This is my husband, Darren. We reside at 25226 Texas Avenue, so we are the property directly to the west of County Road 27. Obviously, you're looking at the memo. We feel that the memo from the Scott Watershed, and we did engage with them along with a couple other neighbors, because we feel very strongly that our property is going to be impacted long-term because of this drainage. There's an existing drainage system today that has issues, and with a new development coming in, the drainage from this new development is going to flow into or discharge into the county right-of-way, but that pipe connects directly to our property. So there will be flow changes over the course of time, and it's going to be concentrated on our property. And I think the memo validates that there was potentially flaws in the modeling that was done, and the fact that they're saying that it meets or affirms their criteria for an assessment of the property. We would expect the city would want to do the due diligence ahead of time to have that analysis done. That's our request, that we requested that there be a modification to resolution number 2545 to do this assessment analysis of the downstream impacts. Any other comments?
thank you,
Well stated.
thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Fregis, 25490 Texas Avenue, Elko. So I can't add much more to that. I invite you all to come out and take a look. If you don't understand what we're saying, or you don't know where it is, the development's going to happen, there's no question. But because it doesn't impact the city on the east side and doesn't impact you on the west side, still should be a concern. Again, come and take a look, so you know what you're voting on, what you're doing. Those plats are perfect, but walk it, so you know what we're talking about. You can see the creeks, you can see the drainage. We just want it to flow appropriately, no drought, no flooding. But the question I have is the holding ponds, who maintains them, who does maintenance on them? It's my understanding they last 20 years, maybe 25. So who in the city maintains those so that they're draining appropriately? Is there someone on your, I guess I don't even know, your parks department, your streets department? And they've been educated, they've been trained, they know exactly what to do with them. And then the lifespan of them is about 20, 25 years?
It's a good question,
Okay.
Cheryl. So
And then what happens after that, when they fail? Is that up to the city to maintain them then, is that correct?
yep.
Or
So-
to fix them again, or upkeep
Yep.
them, is that correct?
Yep, so those ponds, we require that they're dedicated on city lots, so they're city ponds, we own them, we are responsible for maintaining them. We regularly inspect them. They have to meet certain standards. There's testing on the drainage system that we're required to do under the overarching permit that we have with the MPCA, which is called our MS4
Correct.
permit. We test them. The specific timing of work you need to do really depends. If your inlets or outlets need work, they're starting to deteriorate, that may be work. We measure the amount of sediment in the bottom of the ponds to determine if we need to go in and basically dredge them out over time. If you have vegetation that's growing, volunteer vegetation that's starting to reduce the function of the ponds, either because biomaterials are falling into the pond or it's starting to obstruct the function of the pond.
Right,
just
'cause
with
they won't be
bounds and
flowing
things.
appropriately.
Those are all things that the city does on the ponds, and so that would be our responsibility, and we do it now with our existing ponds.
Also, getting back to the Scott County watershed, it should be relevant. It should be relevant on the vote that you determine, or what you did vote on. It may not be part of the city, but it's still part of Scott County. Newmarket, City of Newmarket is part of Scott County, and that should be, maybe it was just a consideration, probably should have been a requirement. I'm not part of watershed, so I can't say that, but you guys all have an opinion, and I have mine. Should have been a requirement that some kind of drainage was done. I know that he said it met everything that the city asked for, but it may not be meeting what will happen the next, I don't know, 20 years, 10 years, 5, I don't know. But as long as we know that the city is responsible after that, then that's who we'll come to. But again, come out, take a look. I'll give you my number. You can see what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Charles Fregis, 25795 Texas Avenue. My concern is the ditch throughout the year that this here ponds go through underneath Texas Avenue and eventually get into a drainage ditch back there where my whole farm drains into, the whole 320 acres. I hear, the water's gonna be limited and no flooding's gonna happen and so forth, and I hope that's what happens, but if this here water would enter into that service ditch down there, my water is behind this, so that would cause me flooding on the back end of all this here stuff for my drainage tile and so forth. That's my concern. That's why the metering of the ponds and so forth sounds like it's very important, and it sounds like you guys have a handle on it, but I'd like assurances that I'm not gonna be flooded in the long run. Of some kind.
I don't know that we can guarantee that you can't be flooded. You could potentially be flooded today, depending on weather conditions and items that are unrelated to the system that would be developed in this. So I think any sort of guarantee that your property will never flood, you don't have that guarantee now, and it may have happened before. What we can do is say that what's built will have to meet standards, and it will be maintained, it will be metered coming out. But there's a lot more downstream and other properties that impact areas. I'll be blunt. In my career, I've had people come and say, hey, development happened next door and I noticed something different. Oh, but they forget to mention that there was 10 more inches of rain that year that they noticed that something was different. We can look at the function, we can look at how much is coming out, we can look at how fast it's coming out. It can be modeled so that it matches what exists today. But to sit here and say, we're gonna guarantee that nothing will happen to anybody's property, we can say it may not be related or shouldn't happen to what this development is doing, but that isn't a blanket that it can't happen because of other things. I just wanna be clear about that up front. It goes to what Rich was saying. If somebody notices something downstream, we can certainly assist in looking into it, but we have to look and see what the actual issue is.
The big thing is, I haven't been flooded out. We've been maintaining that ditch back there. It's a private ditch for many, many years. And adding this here extra to it, even if it's metered, eventually the water is gonna have to go down this here ditch.
And it
at
goes
some
there
time.
today.
Yes.
Yep.
And, everything's been working fine for the last 100+ acres. I'm third generation there, so I don't wanna see problems in the next whatever years.
Yep, and nobody does, I would assume.
I know.
Yep.
That's my comment on the whole thing, so whatever precautions you need to take so this here don't happen would be a wonderful peace of mind for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Ken Wagner. I'm here representing Victory Fields and really representing Leander Wagner. And these are our neighbors, and their feelings are so important to us. We're not experts. We don't know how runoff works and all these details. We're relying as you guys as the experts, and we want you to make a good decision. What's best for Elko New Market, that's what Dad would have wanted, and that's what we want for our neighbors. And we respect your decision.
Thank you. So then, anyone else? No? Okay. So what do we do on this one?
So at this point, if there's any questions from council that you guys need as part of your consideration of this item, if there are none, then it would just be discussion and decision.
Yeah, is there any more discussion?
I just have a quick question for Rich, and apologies, this is a little bit of a learning curve for me, but I think he said our rules and state rules mimic the current conditions. So Rich, do you have any insight as like, are those current conditions already like not great, or like what is like the current status of the drainage just after public comment and maybe hearing that it's not great to start with?
I can speak to the site itself. There's certainly water going to that culvert, to that ditch and creek on the other side. Now, whether there are silted in drainage ways downstream already or silting in, all infrastructure needs maintenance. Even if it was a ditch dug 50 years ago, they will silt in and do occasionally need, and I know Charlie is pretty fastidious about keeping his clean, but if downstream ditches aren't, that could be a source of backups or flooding. But I am seeing nothing in this development proposal that would tell me there's likely to be an increase in flooding from this development. If that's what that answers
you answered it. Thank you.
For peace of mind for our neighbors, do we know what the cost of this assessment of downstream impacts would be if we opted to do that?
I think that's a Rich question.
I'm thinking through it. I could imagine it's easily 3 weeks of one person full time that knows what they're doing. So that's 120, it'd be what, 25 grand plus the time to do it. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to find no impact because we already know that the site's not putting out more than what it already does based on the proposal. So it would, I guess you can certainly do it. We'd be happy to undertake it. But I don't think it's going to result in what people might be hoping.
So to simplify that, Rich, it sounds like what you're saying is that to require it would be more optics than practical benefit.
That's my opinion, yes. If we weren't doing any stormwater management on this site, then that downstream assessment would be very important because it'd be the only way to know if uncontrolled runoff from this site is causing problems downstream. But this runoff will be controlled. So it becomes a moot point. We're not adding to the problem. We already know that.
Mr. Mayor, I also just wanted to make a quick additional comment, which is that, you know, as part of the PUD process, we have a lot of flexibility with the conditions that are imposed on the developer here. But there are still legal standards. We do still need to have basically some kind of a basis to impose a condition. And so if the council wants to go that way, I think what we would need is sort of a clear decision from the council of why it's necessary.
Just for introductions, because I don't know if the council, this is Jack Brooksbank. He's from Campbell Knutson, the city attorney's office. Andrea wasn't able to be here tonight, so Jack is the stand-in.
And I don't think that metric would be met based on what Rich is saying for a need, based on his assertion. So what do you need,
I have one more
sure.
on drainage, not related to drainage question, about the fencing. If they put up, the developer puts up maintenance-free fencing, does that become the residential property owner's responsibility?
Yes.
In 30 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So when they buy
Immediately.
that, it'd be on their lot.
Except the
when they buy
one,
that lot.
except the one at the north end of Street D. That would be the city's to maintain until such time as any road would be extended.
Correct.
So I mean, it's theirs to maintain immediately, but I'm hoping maintenance-free means that for a good period of time, I guess, is what when it comes time to replace.
Yeah, there's no homeowners association or proposed in this development.
Amanda, we would make that fence be designed so that future homeowners could tie in their own fences to it without it being common across the line. So they'd have their own fence eventually if they chose to put fencing up the sides.
Which I think is kind of common. Like when I think about, like, I'm driving in Lakeville, I'm like, they all have the same fence. I don't know, so I'm having a revelation here.
All right, any more discussion? We're gonna go line item by line item. Make a motion to approve Resolution 2544, approving wetland replacement plan. All in favor?
Second? You need a second,
All
Mr. Mayor.
right, second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adopt ordinance number 322, approving plan unit development. May I get a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve resolution 2545, approving preliminary plat.
I will second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. A motion to approve grading authorization agreement.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now we're done with general business. Let's move on to reports.
The first item is under administration. We are giving a report back to the council related to staff's recommendation for public safety training facility options that are available to the city, and we will be asking for direction related to that. As the council is aware, the regional training facility, the Scale Regional Training Facility over in Jordan, has been in operation for nearly 20 years. It was one of the first major projects that Scale did or facilitated as an organization, and it has served the needs of not only Elko New Market, but the other members of the of that facility for that time period. The facility is managed by a joint powers board, so everybody that is a member has a position on that board. I currently serve as the city's representative. And then the facility also rents out to organizations and other entities, other agencies that use it for their training purposes. The facility is now getting to an age where things, speaking bluntly, are starting to wear out. It's ready for its next evolution of what it's going to be. It's also fair to point out that the mode of operation or the direction on that facility has been only to put in what was necessary to keep it running. There hasn't been a lot of money put away to grow it, expand it, or even replace what's there beyond what was absolutely necessary, and that was based on the intent to keep costs down. As you know, the board has been looking at future evolutions of the site. We've presented some of the options and costs associated with it, and I've returned to that group and reported that we would be in for up to $15,000-$16,000 as long as it had these minimum facilities. As you also know, there are other members of the group who are looking for something more expansive, which would be more expensive. One of the other options, which really only became a hard option recently, is Lakeville's currently building what they call the First Center. It's a primarily law enforcement-based public safety training facility that would be owned and operated by the City of Lakeville, so it's not a joint powers facility. City of Lakeville would own it. They would have paying members who would have different classes of membership. That facility is coming online. It's under construction now and will come online in 2026. They just recently sent out the pricing information for the facility, which previously was unavailable. In evaluating that, the public safety chiefs have determined that that actually would be the better long-term option for the city. There's 3 levels of membership. There's the capital membership, where you pay a proportional upfront one-time fee, and then you pay, you have a 10-year commitment, and then you pay annual fee based on the number of officers that you have in your department. Currently would be $11,100. There would be inflationary adjustments, so I would assume it's probably going to be like 3% per year over that 10-year period. But even with that cost, once we get out of the initial year, the annual cost will be less than what we would expect we would likely be paying over at the scale facility if it's refurbished, or to pursue alternative training options, which would be piecemeal, in order to meet our needs. It does not have fire training options like the scale facility has today or will have in the future. However, it does provide some limited training options for fire department, but the fire chief has indicated that giving the level of their training needs, the frequency, and other available options within reasonable proximity, they shouldn't be the driver in the decision, and they feel they can meet their needs adequately going forward, even if there isn't a burn tower, for example, at the First Center. So where the First Center is at is they're looking for people to make, tentative commitments. So they're looking for letters of intent or letters of commitment. It's not a binding letter, it's not a contract, but they want to know who's in, who's out, so that they can finalize items with the facility. The recommendation from staff is that we would provide them with a letter of intent indicating that we would intend to become a capital level member with the facility, and that would be the direction we pursue while we're continuing to participate and work parallel with the scale facility. One thing we do need to point out is our obligations to the scale facility run through at least 2027 based on existing debt with the facility. And so we would have a couple years of double payments where we would still owe dollars to scale in addition to the membership at the First Center. I do have to point out, though, that we're not expected to see huge jumps on what would cost at scale, because that would come with the new capital improvements, and we would anticipate the earliest that would come would be 2028, possibly 2029. So we would expect that the overlap would be at our current participation levels or close to it at the scale facility. So at this point, the chief and I would be open to answering any questions that you have, and we would be we're requesting direction to provide a letter of intent to the City of Lakeville. Craig, do you have anything to add?
I would just say that we'll have to pay the scale, the 2026 fee no matter what, because the First Center wouldn't be open anyways. So really, it's more like the 2027 fee would be extra if we did do this.
And I'm sorry, you said the fire department does not currently use the scale facility?
Is my understanding that they've used the burn tower once in the last 20 years.
Okay,
It is used for training and probably would in the future. And if they have upgraded facilities, there's nothing that says we can't go there as a pure rent, or a user, where we would just rent time. And speaking, I do think that our limited use over the years has been a result of decisions at a leadership level. The current chief has indicated that if we were continue to be a member there, we would use it more frequently than we have in the past.
okay.
But if that facility is not available to us, there are other options that we, like the Able Center up in Burnsville, for example. There are certain mobile training props that can be brought to us, et cetera, as well as continuing to just buy time at the scale facility.
Yeah, but I think they're having a tanker, some of the tanker truck brought that they can practice putting out a fire on that. So, yeah, Jay was very adamant that they can find other places that they aren't gonna use it much in best case scenario, so I wouldn't worry too much that they wouldn't be able to find something else that meets their needs the once or twice a year that they would use it.
And we're still, being in a rural area, there are periodically options to do real house burns when you have abandoned homes, and any fire chief will tell you that that's the ideal. But the reason they have these training facilities is because that's not controlled. You can't guarantee your schedule when they're gonna come up. We hadn't had one for a decade, and then we had 2 last year, for example.
Well, I'd like to see them move to a new state-of-the-art facility versus out back.
Letter of intent, like, does that make us a shoo-in? Because I know there's limited availability. Like, does that
Yeah.
just like get us high up on the list early?
I talked to Chief Paulson specifically, and he said that he could definitely accommodate us because of how small we are. So even if what they're looking at for the larger agencies, he said that wouldn't be an issue for us. So I feel pretty confident that a letter of intent would keep us, as long as we follow through on it, would get us membership there.
It's the advantage of being small. They don't have to make a lot of room at the table.
And I know there's other larger cities that are going the preferred route, and so with the capital route, we're up at the top of the list again still, which I think,
Yeah, because.
I like the idea of
Because
it.
they want,
So.
once capital is kind of established, then they can determine how many preferred they would offer. Where he already, I think they have a pretty good idea for the capital, and he specifically said, that, yeah, we could accommodate you because of your size.
And
So
it's much closer, right?
it is a lot closer, yep, especially when half my department lives in Lakeville, so.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm a yes.
I'm fine with doing the letter of intent.
Me too.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else? We're moving on?
Moving on,
Anybody-
unless
Can you
there's,
speak to Public Works or anybody?
no, Corey didn't have anything specific that he needed me to report.
All right, anything else, chief?
Nope, nothing from our end.
No fire?
There's a report in your packet, for engineering, happy to discuss any of that, and I'd be doing Kate a disservice, so I didn't do the dad joke, so. What's Forrest Gump's password?
Janae?
One, Forrest, one.
I was gonna say Jen.
Oh, man, that just happened. Community development?
But happy to answer any questions, if there's any questions in the memo.
I don't have the updates or
Anything from Parks?
No, as you know, we haven't had any meetings. It does look like we will have an August meeting. The August Ventures property, the 80 acres out by the school, they do have a concept plan that they have submitted to staff. So an early part of that review process is getting feedback from the Parks Commission related to the Parks and Trails elements. So that can be brought to the Planning Commission for their review and then recommendation to the council on the concept. So we'll probably have a August 11th.
Yeah, I will back up and say I do have one update, is that we have a DRT meeting on an 80-acre concept plan on August 5th. So we'll have the developer, township representatives have confirmed that they can come.
Same project.
Yeah.
It's easy, easy?
We met, last week, I think.
Last Tuesday.
It
Seems like forever ago.
I've been on vacation. Let's see, we talked about fire rescue days and kind of hashed that out, and the likelihood of, I think we talked about this at least maybe at the last meeting. Maybe you guys talked about it, because I wasn't here, about the fire rescue days committee sort of being absorbed back into CCEC, so that conversation was only had with myself, and there's only 2 other members outside of Jessica being there, and Kate was there to provide feedback, so we did not have a quorum to make any sort of decisions on that. So we're going back to the drawing board with how we're gonna make up the CCEC. I think a survey is going out to current members to get feedback on maybe if they're still interested in being a part, or if they're can commit to having somebody else show up on their behalf, so that we have a bigger turnout and more help and that sort of thing. So that's hopefully gonna get hashed out a little bit at the August 19th meeting. And then I'll just put in a plug for community picnic, which is August 23rd. I can't be there, I will be out of town, but
So to
it's a good event.
So for Andrew and Megan, that is a city-hosted item. Traditionally, CCEC has not been actively engaged. It's basically been city staff and council people who basically host this event for the community. So if you are available and interested in helping out, we need everything from people who monitor bouncy houses to assembling hot dogs. Although I can tell you, if you assemble hot dogs, you need to make sure you diet the week before, because somehow hot dogs disappear somewhere in the process.
August 23rd?
Yep,
The
I'm off
evening.
that weekend.
yep. And it's a Saturday. It's
Yeah.
from 11 to 2.
Might be able to come for a little bit. I have a flight in the early afternoon.
Drag my wife into it,
I can hustle.
volunteer too.
It's actually, it's really fun. The Public Works guys actually love doing it because it's fun. You get to talk to people in the community. It's just it's a good time.
Face paint, bouncy houses, pony rides,
My
like all
favorite.
kinds of good stuff, yes.
Starts at 11?
So,
Put it in my calendar now.
it's just
Yeah. We usually have around 220 to 240 people attend every year pretty consistently.
Over at Wagner?
Yep. I'll send a
Okay.
appointment out for council members.
That's because I'm making it in my calendar now. All right, anything else, or that's it? Okay. Scale.
We only, since it's July, we typically don't have meetings for for scale, but we did have a brief executive committee meeting, which was entirely oriented around legislative agenda, setting that up for the year, making sure everybody was on the same page, and setting up future agenda items. It was relatively short, maybe 20 minutes, and nothing of note.
Okay. Service delivery.
We do not meet in July.
Oh. And no Josh, so no I-35, I assume.
We
unless
don't meet in
somebody-
July.
Oh, no? Megan, sorry.
July, we're off too.
Nope.
So,
Okay.
let me
That's
check
Josh,
real
it's
quick.
not you. I don't know.
Josh is the backup.
14th?
Oh.
But he was on I-35 for a long time.
Might be off in August because I don't have a calendar invite for that either. I just had it in my GCal, so I'll just check.
All right, any other discussion that we need to talk about, or you want to?
Nothing from me.
No? No? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.